A note before we get into it. These stories are my own creative interpretations of the ancient stories from the Prose Edda, originally written by Snorri Sturluson. My interpretations are heavily influenced by the writing style of Dag Grossman, who I had the pleasure of listening to throughout my childhood, as well as Ryan Smith. Many authors have rewritten their own versions of these stories, but like Dag, I am a storyteller, and thus my stories will reflect my own creativity and way of speaking. Any deviations or shortcomings, then, are my own. Odin's quest for knowledge. With the completion of the 9 worlds, Odin pondered the endless possibilities that existed in his newly created universe. He pondered the questions that had no answers, and he pondered the answers that had no questions yet. His worlds were formed, but chaos loomed in every fiber of existence, threatening to thrust it into confusion and disorder. How could he expect to reign over his new creation without intimate knowledge of everything? And thus, Odin set out to acquire the wisdom of all. But doing so had never been done before, and he was unsure on how to go about achieving such a feat. By usurping Ymir, Odin had acquired a new name, Ig, the Terrible One, as well as Allfather, the first of many he would gain throughout the ages. Odin knew he wished not to rule as Ymir had, as an authoritative being, indifferent to the ignorance of the many, but instead wanted to share his acquired knowledge with the beings of his creation, so they too could have wisdom and be wise. So Odin set out to acquire the knowledge of the universe. To do this, the Allfather climbed to the top of Yggdrasil. His words of that time are echoed in the poem Words of the High One. 9 long nights I hung upon that wind-swept tree, pierced by a spear and pledged to Odin, sacrificed myself to myself upon that tree whose roots arise, whence even the wisest know not. None gave me drink, none gave me bread. Looking down I saw the runes and, seizing them with a cry, fell down from the tree. Thus, Odin acquired the knowledge of the runes, an alphabet of strange symbols that embody the primordial forces of the physical and spiritual realms of the 9 worlds. He sacrificed to gain, and was rewarded with vast knowledge as recompense for his pain. But still he was not content, for knowledge without wisdom, Odin understood, could lead to greater harm than not having received said knowledge in the first place. And so, Odin set off again, this time to Jotunheim, to visit his mother's brother, a Jotun called Mimir, the Rememberer. Odin spoke to Mimir and asked to have a drink from his well, but Mimir refused. The wisdom of the universe is not something freely given, but something you must sacrifice for, in order to gain. Odin pondered this for a while, for he had already sacrificed himself to himself. What more did he have to offer? A single drink from the well of wisdom would give him the power to use his acquired knowledge to rule over the 9 worlds, and understand the forces of chaos to keep them at bay. But what was he willing to give up in order to truly see? With that thought, Odin carved out his own eye and placed it in Mimir's awaiting hand, which Mimir dropped into the well. The sparkling waters accepted Odin's surrender and dragged his eye into its depths, and Mimir calmly nodded, granting his permission for his nephew to take a drink from the well of wisdom. He drew a horn and filled it with water from the well, and handed it to Odin, who took it in one bloody hand. As the cool liquid touched his lips, Odin's sight expanded beyond the bounds of ordinary understanding. With each drop of water that slid down his throat, Odin understood greater depths of the fabric of reality. After he had drained the horn, his knowledge of the runes mingled with his new knowledge of the order of chaos. He understood fully the web of connectiveness between all things, how the actions of the smallest insect could influence the decisions of the mightiest Jotun, how the decisions of one may sway the actions of the many, how every creature tries, and fails, to outrun the inescapable flow of time. Of these, and everything else, he understood. Odin turned and said goodbye to Mimir, leaving as a different being than the one who had originally entered his uncle's dwelling, and he walked back to Asgard.